Okay, this is the most exciting moment that's ever been on YouTube, so let's make it happen fast. Because there's a million people watching, we don't want them to leave.
All 1.5 minutes of their attention spans.
Yeah, exactly, that's the problem. Okay. We're finishing up Ais Yud. Yud Aleph is a fascinating little piece that we'll probably spend most of the morning on, and hopefully Monday we'll finish it basically. In Gimmel, the Rebbe explains to us the inyan of the Bechira B'Seichel. In Dalet and Hey, the Rebbe explains the inyan of the Bechira happening mitzad b'Neshama, Etzem. In Vav, the Rebbe makes the shiluv, the combination of those two levels, and that they both work in harmony, and that the etzim expresses itself in the seichel, and ultimately that brings about an elevation in the level of bechira that comes from the etzim, and we have not explained that yet. That's about to be explained in Ais Yud Aleph. That's Ais Vav. And Ais Zayin, Ches, and Tes, and to a great extent Yud, are all about explaining the mashal of the Alter Rebbe in the Siddur. And that takes us to a whole new level of understanding the inyan of the Pikach, that not only is he not connecting to intermediaries mitzad Klipa, he's even not connecting to intermediaries mitzad Kedusha, right? That he wants Etzem. And we saw that with the Alter Rebbe in Ais Ches. Okay. And that's Ana Nosiv Malka. So we're in the middle of Yud. We turned to page Kuf Ches yesterday. Mm-hmm. And then Yud, so the Rebbe explains what's the penimius of the difference between the Pikach and everybody else. So he says, everybody else, what do they want? They want, well, let's read the words, right? The Rebbe says, Ikar Inyan, second line in Yud, on page Kuf Zayin. Ikar inyan davedes kechavim hazas hu shechoshvim davar shu rak emtzoi leikar. They make that which is only an intermediary and is not the ultimate thing itself into the ikar. That's the most important thing. Okay, and that expresses itself both in terms of the connecting to it, because it seems to have some sort of mila, and that also in terms of the gashmias or the hashba that you get from it. Right? Okay. So that story about the fish, right? That story, of course, of the fish is, I mean, on one hand, that story is really all about, it's not a Hasidic story. It's an interesting story. The geish that I wanted yesterday from the story of the fish was just to not get so caught up in the gashmias of it, right? But really that story is all about taking the diamonds back to their source, meaning getting a big place in Elam Abba, which this mimer is definitely not focusing on. That doesn't mean that isn't what a person gets, but that hopefully is not what they're worried about, right? Okay, so the first line on Kuf Ches, he considers the intermediaries ikar efshar liyah, so it's possible to be in the sinus mokim, a pretext sheyachshiv gam emtsoim kechavim zalos v'shefa gashmi leikar. Okay, al pi ze yesh leimar. They're the Umas Elam, they're the sum, and this is the language of the Medrash. Going back to the Medrash, that there are some who worship the sun, and there are some that worship the moon. Right? But the Yidden serve the Eibishter. Because the source of Umas Elam, and this is what we saw throughout the Maimer, right? And since we've been talking about Panemius and Chitzonius, that the source of Umas Elam was Chitzonius Aratzon, meaning, obviously, the Eibishter wants all of these people to exist, right? Okay, but he wants them to exist within the context of, so to speak, a means to another end, right? They'll be important in terms of making sure that the world is the way the world has to be in order for the Aveda that has to take place, and that Ikar Aveda is happening by Yidden. It's also happening by non-Jews. But the Ikar Aveda is happening by Yidden, and that's the Panemius Aratzon. And so there's all this whole reality that has to be. Right? What's the Indian of Chitzonius Aratzon? And this is important because we'll have to understand this in Yud Aleph. Fourth line. And we're going to see the union of a chitzain. A chitzain is someone who is doing one thing because he wants something else. He's not really munach, he's not really settled in what he's doing. He's doing one thing, but he's thinking about something else, or he's doing one thing and it's in order to do something else. Whereas panemius is, no, that what's happening right now is what's happening. Right? V'bachina de chitzenius haratzin. And this whole quality of chitzenius haratzin, Kameshi Makar Lumas Elam, as it is the source of the nations of the world, who ba'ifin, in such a way, meaning by chitzenius haratzin, when we've been talking about panemius haratzin, chitzenius haratzin. So there's things that I do that are means to an end. Okay, but I might understand them as a means to an end. Right? If I understand the thing as a means to an end, then I'm still connected to the end. I just understand that in order to go get the glass of water, I have to move my chair. So moving my chair is an external expression of my will, because that's not really what I want. I don't really want to move the chair. But when I'm moving the chair, I haven't lost sight of the fact that I want a cup of water. Right? But the most powerful expression of chitzenius haratzin is that I think that moving the chair is the single most important thing. I get into moving the chair. Right? I mean, I don't think it's something, again, mitzad echad, I want it for something else. Mitzad sheni, though, I start to think that it itself has importance. Right? I don't see it as only a means to an end.
The border from Makif, right? The Sonia and the Panemius border from Makif?
Well, we're talking about Ratzon, so Ratzon is Makif, but that's what we're going to work on today in Yud Aleph. A better understanding of Chitzonius and Panemius, and a better understanding of two different levels in Makif, Chitzonius of Makif and Panemius of Makif. This one, you have to get to Yud Aleph in order to understand that. So what's the Indian of Chitzonius? Sheroitza beza davar b'shvil Indian acher. V'bachina the Chitzonius haratzon, but it's worse. It's not felt in the person. The person gets, meaning mitzad echad, the person's doing something and he's not really munach in it. He's not really completely put his whole self into it. Why? Because he's doing this in order to do something else. Right? On the other hand, so in other words, it's really an expression of chitzonius haratzon. But he doesn't even understand that it's chitzonius haratzon. He thinks that this is the most important thing. Like what I'm doing now really has importance because it's going to lead to something else. Right? But hold on, if what you're doing is only about getting to something else, so then the something else is what's important. This is necessary, but it's not necessarily important. Right? Oh, in other words, the intermediary. The intermediary fulfills a purpose. But don't get stuck in the intermediary. But if I get stuck in the intermediary, two things happen. One is, the whole union of the intermediary is that it's only in order to get something else, which is what I want. I want the shefa that's going to come from my relationship with this thing. So that's true, that's chitzonius. But not only that, but I also think that this thing is important. So there's a certain internal contradiction. On one hand, I see it just as a means to an end because I'm interested in the end and not the means. I'm not focused on what I'm doing. I'm focused on what I'm going to get as a result of what I'm doing. On the other hand, I give chashivas to the thing I'm doing because it's the source of what I want, which is the thing at the end. So I'm focusing on it, but I'm not focusing on it. I mean, I don't feel that this is just chitzonius haratzon. Right? But I might think this is the most important thing. In other words, I give great credence to the intermediary. Therefore, what comes mistayef means it branches off from this. What comes as a result of this is that they see the intermediary as an ikr. Right? Okay. So that's what we were learning earlier in the mind. I live enough 75. Try to go through it quickly because I do want to get through Yud Aleph today. And we're finishing on time today because especially they should say hello to the minion, etc. V'yesh l'kasha. Hi, Josh. Said good morning, Josh. Je peux parler en français, hein? Okay. Look at footnote 75. Re'ei Rambam, Hilchos Avodah Zarah b'Tchilasei, which, remember, we talked about in the beginning of the mind. The Zeh Shetau, that which they made a mistake, Shetzarech Lachlei Kavod l'Kechavim Hazalis, that they have to give honor to the Kechavim Hazalis. Hu lo mipnei shetzarech lahodes lehem al derech tivusa l'shaki. It's not that they have to thank them like you thank the waiter, right? You thank the waiter who poured the wine. You don't thank, that's who you give the thanks to, which we talked about. Like we said earlier, Ella. And this is what the Rambam says, right? The Kadosh Baruch Hu gave them honor. And this fact, that we should give them honor because the Eibishter gave them honor. What are they saying? Who rots in a kel? They're saying that's what the Eibishter wants me to do. Because remember, these are people who haven't forgot about the Eibishter, Elokah de Elokaya. The two different levels of Elokah de Elokaya. The emphasis on Elokah, and then there's an Elokaya who does those things he does, but he has Bechira to do it. Or the emphasis on Elokaya, that really the intermediaries are separate, but they're ultimately appointed by the king, by in this case by the Eibishter. Okay. The Rebbe says, perhaps you could say, Shasiba l'taos says, what's the reason for this taos? Well, what we're saying now. Ki b'chitzoni yisaratzah. In terms of external will, meaning will that's interested in something else. Chitzoni yisaratzah is always that I'm doing one thing, but I'm doing it for the sake of something else. I never relate to anything as an end unto itself. It's always a means to another end. And I'm constantly running after that end. Nirgash, so then what do they feel? And this is what the Rebbe just explained to us. They figure this, they don't relate to the fact that the existence of these kachavim and mazalis is ratzon chitzoni, is some external expression and just a means to an end. They think it's dafka the end, so they're going to worship it. I mean, they know the Eibishter put it there, and they know it's serving the Eibishter, but they take the external and turn it into something panimi, into something of actual importance. It's a good thing you're not here, Josh, because there's so many people you wouldn't have a place to sit. All right? Okay. But 4 lines up. V'shorish d'Yisrael pnimius haratzon. The shorish of Yidden is pnimius haratzon. Shemitzad pnimius haratzon ein nesinus mokim. There's no pretext la'ezin yinacher. When your pnimius haratzon is that what I'm doing with all of my being, and that's the only thing that's going on. Right? This thing is not a means to an end. This thing is the end unto itself, but in Kedusha, in a positive way, not in a negative way. Right? And that's b'chol d'v'chedeyu. In all your ways should know the Eibishter. Kol ma'asech yu l'shem shemayim, that all of your deeds should be for the sake of heaven. So that everything I'm doing should be for a positive end. But I understand that everything I do is a means for that positive end. So that's an incredible place in Avodah. Kol ma'asech yu l'shem shemayim. Everything you do should be l'shem shemayim. That means what I'm doing right now is not necessarily of great importance, but it's part of the process of my serving the Eibishter. And so for that reason, the person gives it great importance. And it does have great importance. Okay. Then there's the higher level, b'chol d'rechad de'eyu. Rabbi explains this in Parshas Vayetze in Chelik Yud in Lekutei Sichos. It's a Sicha there, and it's worth. I think it's Parshas Vayetze. Bereshis Chelik Yud. What's b'chol d'rechad de'eyu? B'chol d'rechad de'eyu is in everything you're doing, you're serving the Eibishter. It's not a means to an end; it's an end unto itself. So everything you're doing is part of you. So kol ma'asech yu l'shem shemayim is that you're eating in order to have the energy to serve the Eibishter. So that's very good. That's amazing. That's a level in Avodah. That's the first level. It might be I'm eating because I like eating. I like the taste of the food, and I like the experience, and I like eating. Okay, no, the first level in Aveda is I'm eating in order that I should have the energy to serve the Eibishter after I finish eating. Okay. But then there's a higher level. The eating itself becomes part of your relationship with the Eibishter. Right? It's the Eibishter's food. It's like eating your mother's chicken soup. It's part of your relationship with your mother. Right? Or your wife's chicken soup if it's better. So then it's not you're not eating the chicken soup in order to do something else. You're eating the chicken soup because eating the chicken soup is an expression of your relationship. In this case, okay, the mashal with your mother in the nimshal with the Eibishter. The difference between eating simple pshat and the difference between eating on a regular Thursday and eating on a Yom Tov. Right? This morning, you actually get to eat in a holier way. Why? Because there's a din in Shulchan Aruch. You have to wash and have a Suda and Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh. So then the Suda becomes part of your relationship with the Eibishter. You're not just eating the Suda because you need koyach to go do those things you do in order to relate to the Eibishter. The Suda itself is meaning it's imposed by halacha. There's not even any of it involved. It's just done for you. That the Suda itself is part of your relationship with the Eibishter. V'lochin yesh liYisrael hakara. Therefore, the Yidden know, last three lines on Yud. Shekechavim hazas hem rak em tzoy. They're only an intermediary. Kegarzen biyad ha'chetziv, like the axe in the hand of the woodchopper. V'chein shefa gashmi, and also the shefa gashmi. This is what the Rebbe told us at the beginning of the paragraph. Hu rak b'shvil avedus Hashem. Why is the Eibishter give us gashmis? He gives us gashmis so we can serve the Eibishter with it. Right? I need gashmis to stay alive. Okay, that's true, but why are you staying alive? What are you doing? We're serving the Eibishter. Right? It's not that there's two different things happening. It's all one. If I do it right, that's not easy. Okay, so they want the Eibishter. Okay, so now let's see what the Rebbe says. Hopefully we have enough time to do it. If we don't, so we'll finish that on Sunday, and we'll get through Yud Beis and we'll finish the Maimer by Monday morning. Do not worry. I'm sure you're staying up at night worrying about that.
I'm quivering, shaking my boots.
Val Pizeh. Yesh levar gam hamayla bezeh. Now we're going to answer the question that we're going to explain the statement that we said at the beginning of Beis Vav. After explaining that is gimmel, that the bechira comes miseichel, pikach. And then dalet and hey that is coming from etzem, chelki avaya, amar nafshi. The tension in the medrash. The medrash on one hand says we're choosing the Eibishter mitzad seichel. On the other hand, we're choosing the Eibishter mitzad nefesh. What is it? It's in the Shama or is it seichel? Oh, so nice vav. The Rebbe said it's both, and it's the fact that it's both elevates the bechira that comes from the etzem, from the neshama. Then the Rebbe didn't explain it. Now the Rebbe is explaining that. After we understand everything we understood in Zion, Ches, Tes, and Yud, we can understand the answer to that, the explanation of that. It wasn't a question. It's a statement. The Rebbe just didn't explain the statement. Al Piza Yesh Levar Gam HaMaila Bezeh, the advantage, the Bechiris Yisrael, B'Kodesh Baruch Hu Lo Yirak Mitzad HaRatzon the Neshama. That's interesting. The Rebbe uses that lashon, right? The Ratzon of the Neshama. That's going to be very important to understand what's happening. That the choice of Am Yisrael in the Kodesh Baruch, the fact that the Yidden are choosing the Eibishter, is not only mitzad, a function of the Ratzon, the desire of the Neshama, Shelamayla Miya Seichel, which is obviously beyond Seichel, super rational connection to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, Ella, Gam mitzad Seichel, also mitzad Seichel, Canal, Siv Zion. Why is this Siv Zion? I mean, yes, Siv Zion talks about that, but really we mentioned it originally in Siv Vav. Heim bechinas penimi. I'm sorry. Kizeh shashadish Yisrael bepenimi samakif. That's what we've been saying throughout the whole Maimer. The source of the Yidden is mi penimi samakif, penimi saratzon, the inner desire, and we talked about that one way. We're going to have to understand this in a deeper way now. Hu mipnei Yisrael heim bechinas penimi. So Am Yisrael is a penimi. Oh, aren't we a pnimi because our shorish is in pnimi saratzon? Like, how's that work? Which is the cart and which is the horse? Right? Okay. Keep reading. Ukiyadua, the shorish apanimi umipnimius amakif. We're going to read a few words, and then we're going to talk about this outside. It's known that the source of a panimi is b'pnimius amakif. Now, up until now, we've been calling pnimius amakif pnimius aratzon, which is what it is, but we're going to have to get more specific. V'lochein ikar ha'ilui b'chiris Yisrael, the essential loftiness of the choice of the Jewish people, b'kadosh Baruch Hu, is not mitzad, so simply mitzad who kishaharatzain the neshama. It's when the ratzon of the neshama, which is chelki avaya amra nafshi, that's ois dalet and hey, explaining that our choice comes from our neshama. But when that level of neshama shelamayla seichel, which is beyond seichel, makif nimshach, is drawn down upeil gam b'seichel, and acts also in seichel, which is panimi. Keep reading, and then again we'll explain all this. But first, we want to get to the period where the Rebbe says the whole equation. Peil gam b'seichel sha'al yadei zeh, by virtue of the fact that the super rational connection that expresses itself in rational seichel, sha'al yadei zeh dafka nimshach mi etzem neshama. This is how you understand that it's coming from etzem neshama, the highest place, panimius amakif, shelamayla gam mi haratzon shelamayla mi aseichel. That's higher than ratzon, which is higher than seichel. And what's ratzon? Oh, so now the Rebbe says something we haven't seen yet. Chitzonius amakif. Ratzon is chitzonius amakif. Okay, so how do we understand all this? What does the Rebbe mean? Because if you notice, the Rebbe, it's very interesting. The Rebbe emphasized twice at the beginning of this that are we saying that the choice of the yid comes from intellect, or is it coming from? Now, up until now, we've just been saying neshama. Here, the Rebbe says the ratzon of the neshama. Okay. To understand this, we have to understand. How do we understand things in Melukat? We understand things in the neshama. In the neshama, there are two different levels: Pnimi and Makif. Powers of the soul that are clothed in the conscious reality of the person, and powers of the soul that are Makif, that are superconscious. Right? And each of those is divided into two. What are the powers of the soul that are clothed in conscious reality? Seichel and midos, intellect and emotions. Right? 10 spheres, 3 spheres of intellect, 7 spheres of emotion, 6 in malchus. Okay. What are the two different aspects of kerchis makifin? Super rational powers of the soul, ratzon and tainug. Oh, so in this context, so ratzon is chitzonius amakif, and tainug is pnimius amakif. Why do you want something? Why do you want something? Why do you have a superconscious desire for something? Where does that come from?
Time?
You
have a timer for it?
That's midas. That's way down. Right? We're going to talk about the connection between ratzon and midas in a minute. But if you and I talk about a tiger, we're talking about superconscious, lofty states of reality. Right? But I can ask you a question. Okay, fine. Let me say, I have a tiger for it. Why do I have a tiger for it?
You want to connect to Hashem?
Okay, in Kedusha, could be, maybe. Why do I want to connect to Hashem? Okay, so in this mimer we understand we're talking about we're talking about a level that's mamash etzem. Okay, fine, but we're talking powers of the soul, talking in you, right? Why do you want something? We've talked about this. It gives you pleasure.
Yeah.
You get pleasure from it. Since it gives you pleasure, you want it. Oh, so what's pnimius amakif? Tainug, pleasure. What's chitzonius amakif? Ratzon. Right? We've always been talking about ratzon as an inyan pnimi. Okay, that's true, right? But really, in the super rational powers of the soul, there's two different levels. The external aspect of it and the internal aspect of it. Meaning, so to speak, how it does what it does, so to speak, and what's really going on. So to speak, what's happening outside of you or relative to what's outside of you. It's happening in you, but it's relative to what's outside of you, or what's happening in you. What does Ratzon connect me to? What's outside? What do I want? That, and that. Oh, okay. What's Tainug? Tainug isn't my connection to those things outside. Tainug is a state of powerful expression of my soul. Pleasure. Now, it might be I'm getting pleasure from some external thing. Okay, that can be. But the pleasure itself is a very powerful expression of me, not in a negative way, just an expression of me. What's that similar to? Well, go back down into the levels of panimi. Right? What's panimi? Panimi is it's clothed in vessels. It's something that works in some orderly way. Okay, there's seichel and midos. Where's seichel happening? In me. Seichel is me, experiencing an intellectual reality that's me. Not in a klipatika way, not in a selfish way. Just that's what seichel is. Right? What are midos? So interesting. Even though midos mitzad echad are more yesh, more me, feeling me. Well, but that's not really what midos are. Midos, I have a love and fear. What are those by definition? What's necessary for me to have love and fear? Something else outside of me that isn't me, that I love or I fear. Me, there's my connection to what's outside of me. Seichel is my connection to myself. Theoretically, there could just be you and you could think about things. Right? It'd be hard to think about things if there's nothing out there to think about. But, right? Seichel is an internal experience. Midos is me connecting to what's outside of me. That's in Kerches Penimim. In Kerches Makifin, Ratzain is me connecting to what's outside of me. I want something. Tainug is me experiencing myself. Again, not in a negative way. That's it. Tainug is just a power of me, but it's a power of me relative to me. It's referred to as hisrachvus nefesh. The nefesh feels expansive when it's experiencing pleasure. Right? Okay. So now that's very, very interesting. That means that midos, on a certain level, are very similar to Ratzon. They're my relationship to the outside. And Seichel is very similar to Tainug. My, not so much relationship, just the reality of the inside. Oh, so that's why Seichel is more panimi than midos, and Tainug is more panimi than Ratzon. So on the two makiftic levels of the soul, so we'll talk about chitzonius hamakif. What's that? That's Ratzon. And we might even call it chitzonius Ratzon. The external expression of Ratzon is what? I want, A wants B. What's the panemius of that Ratzon? A experiences pleasure. From B, okay, beseder, but the pleasure is happening in A. That might produce the next step, which is a desire to connect to B. I want B, or I want A, whatever it is. Okay. But the tainug is happening inside. Oh, so what's a panimi and what's chitzi? Why is the Rebbe explaining all this? The Rebbe wants to explain that the fact, what are we trying to explain? What's the advantage of the makif-dik relationship that the Jew has with the Eibishter being expressed in Seichel? Right, that's what the Rebbe said. It's elevated by virtue of the fact that it's expressed in Seichel. Now, if any of you have ever learned Vata Tetzava, So then you'll know that the Indian of Moshe Rabbeinu is to bring Emunah into Das. Okay, so that sounds very similar. It's not, because we're talking one level, the other we're talking another, but it's a similar idea. That what's the idea is take the makif and bring it into seichel, into das. Otherwise, it's a makif. It doesn't affect me. Das is what is my conscious reality, my panemius. Okay, yeah.
How would you translate makif?
Encompassing, right? Something that hasn't been in Chassidus. It means something. Now, this might be positive or negative, right? In a positive sense, it's a level of godly light that's so powerful it can't express itself in the limited nature in which things express themselves in what we call kelim, vessels. Right? So, powers of the soul, Ratzanism, makiftik, power of the soul. It expresses itself through the inner powers of the soul, but in itself is a makif. Where is your sight centered? What kli contains the power of sight? Your eyes. What kli contains the power of speech? Your mouth, your larynx, your throat. What kli contains the power of hearing? Your ears. Right? Okay. What kli contains the power of ratzon? Ratzon powers your sight, powers your hearing, powers your speech equally. Because it's beyond any particular vessel. That's a makif. It's all encompassing. And if you think about it, everything it's a very clear image also, because everything you do exists within the context of a certain will that you have. Why'd you move your chair? Right? Well, the panemius of we're just talking about Ratzon itself. Now we're not going to get into Tainuk for a second. The panemius of the Ratzon is I want a drink of water. Okay. So that's what I want. That's really what I want. Okay. But what do I do in order to get that? I have to move my chair, get out of my chair, walk to the door, open the door, walk around the corner, go find decide whether I'm feeling in one with the ecological reality of the universe or in opposition to this. So I'll pick the plastic one or the paper one, right? And I turn on the tap and I spill a little out because that's what we do. And I make a bracha and I drink the water. Now, everything I did along the way was I wanted to do it, right? But what did I really want?
The water.
I want the water. Pneumius pneumius, what did I really want? I didn't want the water. I wanted the pleasant experience the water gives me. Right? That's the pneumius. That's the timing of it. Right? I didn't really want the water. I was thirsty. I wanted the experience of quenching my thirst, which is a pleasant experience. Why? I don't know. It just is, right? It's not like I was sitting and, I learned all about quenching thirst for an hour before I did this. It's just that you and I just find that a pleasant experience. So that's why I went to get there. And I find being thirsty an unpleasant experience. Okay, so that's why so all of those things that you and I did in order to go get that water, because we went together. Actually, I went to get one of your cups of coffee, so I had to schlep you over there so you'd make it for me. Okay, so everything we did, there were all these different mini expressions of will. Moving the chair, standing up, opening the door, walking, all that. I wanted to do those things because if I didn't want to do it, I wouldn't have done it, right? Okay, but the panemius of Ratzon was I wanted to drink the water. The panemius of the Ratzon was the drinking water gives me pleasure. Why? I don't know. I don't know why it gives me pleasure. Pleasure is much deeper in our superconscious than Ratzon is that aspect of superconscious that's constantly becoming revealed in conscious me. Oh, I want to rub along. I become aware of that. Why? Now, interestingly enough, in order to appreciate the connection between Ratzon, as opposed to Tainuk, Ratzon and Midas, it could be either a sophisticated will, or it could just be a Taiva, which is Midas, right? I just love chocolate. Right? Oh.
How would you? Because I feel like I don't have a good translation of Mida. Like, how would you?
Emotional attributes.
Okay,
That aspect of you that is interested in connecting to things outside of you. Okay. Right? You love it.
Character traits good or no?
What?
Because I put character traits, but I don't think that's a.
Well, but oh yeah, but I mean, really, I mean, it's called emotive traits as opposed to character traits, right? Okay. The emotions I have. So those emotions can either be expressed positively or negatively, but those emotions are there's different emotions that we all have, and we all have them. Right? It's called love and fear, etc., etc. Okay, so those emotions exist. How do I express them? What do I love? Do I love my car or do I love God? Okay, well, fine, I'm gonna love something. Okay. So now it's back to where we were. The Rebbe just said Yisrael are panimim, therefore they come from panimius aratzah. What's a panimi? Well, what's a chitzoni? Where does chitzonius come from? Chitzonius comes from a place called tohu. What's tohu? Tohu is a level of reality where all of the energy can't be expressed. And now, we just said this about ratzon, but ratzon can be expressed in a kli. It's just expressed in a kli through seeing or speaking but so you're expressing it in a kli in a positive way, but the ratzon itself is powering what's being expressed in the kli. Let's start with the positive. There's a level of reality called tikkun. What's tikkun? Tikkun is orderliness. When things happen in an orderly fashion, how does that happen? That's panimi. That the light is clothed in a vessel and expresses itself in a positive and healthy way. Right? So, the emotion of an adult. Okay, so there's a shorish of that emotion in a higher place, right? That comes down, so to speak. There's the emotion above intellect and the emotion below. You and I call the emotion above ratzon. Okay, that's so interesting enough why the word ahava can also mean want, ava, like the te'avon, right? Ta'ava, that's with a vav, but right, the te'avon, you should have an appetite for it. Oh, the root of that word is av, but that's above, not below. So there's, so to speak, the mida above das, and there's the mida below das. Really, we say there's the rutzon above das and the rutzon below das. What's the rutzon below das? Called the mida. Midas and rutzon go together a lot. I'm connected to it, so I want it. So which came first, the mida or the rutzon? I don't get it. That rutzon is up here and the mida is down here, so it should be there's a rutzon and then the mida. Well, okay, yes, I want it, so therefore I connect to it, or I'm connected to it, therefore I want it. Our experience is the latter, right? I feel a connection to it, therefore I want it. That's what happens in you and I. Now I might say to myself, it's not healthy for me, so I'm not going to do it, but I might. So the feeling of connection seems to be coming from below. Well, those two feed off each other. They're both external expressions, i.e., they're relative to what's outside of me, right? A panimi is someone whose life is ordered. So even their emotions will act in an orderly way. What will they be ordered by? Their intellect. They will emote in a reasonable and objectively proper way. They will come to an understanding of what is worthy of my love and what is not worthy of my love. Right? That's tikkun. Right? Tayu, well, we talked about it earlier. It's not clothed in kalim. What does that mean? It's not a panimi. What does that mean? It's a makif. What does that mean? What was our mashal? The sun, sunlight. What does sunlight shine on? Wheat fields and garbage dumps. It's all the same. To the sun, it's all the same. Right? So in makif, evil, good, it's all just a big mush. Toyu, chaos. Okay, klipa. That's where klipa comes from. Okay. What's the yid? He's a panimi. The yid is someone who's able to bring makif into panimius. What's the most powerful expression of that? That's what the Rebbe is explaining here. Again, again, let's go back to what we said at the beginning. For two different levels of soul. Inner powers, all-encompassing, super rational powers, right? Another aspect of ratzon, it's not clothed in any vessel. It expresses itself through all of them equally, but it's not clothed in any of them. My sight can't express itself in my mouth. My will can. My will expresses itself in my mouth by me talking or me chewing, whichever one, right? Okay. So will express itself equally. It's not clothed in any of them. Keches panimim are clothed in a particular kli, in a particular vessel, and only express themselves through that vessel. I can't see through my mouth and I can't hear through my eyes. It's panimian. So in keches panimian, there's two levels, seichel midas. In keches makifin, all-encompassing, another aspect of the super rational aspect of ratzon, I don't have immediate control over it because it's not conscious me. If you're saying something and you want to stop, what do you... Stop. No problem, right? Just stop, right? You're looking at something, you don't want to look. Today you don't do that. Today you press something on the piece of plastic and change the look. Okay, I'm sorry, but well, you just close your eyes. You're hearing something you don't want to hear. Or turn up the sound on the thing that you have stuck in your ears. Whatever, right? So inner powers I have immediate control over. My thought, my speech, my action, inner powers. You think about something, you don't want to think about it, start thinking about something else. It'll come back, push it out again. Hard. Doable? Absolutely. 100%. You're thinking about an idea that you all of a sudden you become aware. I mean, sometimes we think about things that are negative and we're not even aware we're really thinking about them. We're halfway through a conversation where we're saying all sorts of nasty things about someone or who knows what. We're saying that thing that we didn't say when we had the conversation with them when they really annoyed us and we would have liked to have said the following, but we didn't think about it at the time, right? So now you're going through the whole conversation and you're saying it. All of a sudden you realize you're doing that. Why am I doing that? I don't want to do that. That's like a stupid thing to do. Stop thinking about that. So it'll keep popping into your head, but get rid of it. Sing it again. I don't know. Say over a Mishnah that you've memorized. Say over some Tanya you've memorized. Say over some Tehillim you've memorized. Right? Get it out of your head. Okay. That I can do. Ratzon? Makif? Superconscious? I don't have immediate control over it. Don't want a cigarette. I cannot want a cigarette if I'm a cigarette smoker. In 5 years, I can get to a point where I don't want a cigarette. Right? In 5 years, I might be a person that doesn't want a cigarette. Right now, I'm going to want a cigarette. That doesn't mean I have to smoke it. That's conscious me. I don't have to smoke it. And if I don't smoke it for long enough, guess what's going to happen? I'll lose the desire for it. But I don't have any control over the ratzon. Now, again, there's a case where ratzon and desire are interchangeable. Mida and ratzon. Because they go together. And what else goes together? Seichel and tainug. Oh, so if my emunah resonates in my seichel, where's it coming from? Chitzonius or pnimius? Is it coming from ratzon or tainug? Well, we said seichel and tainug are connected because they're both very, very powerful expressions of my neshama expressing itself. Again, in a positive way. Just experiencing itself. Right? Whereas ratzon and midas go together. They're my connection to the outside. One's chitzonius, midas and ratzon. One's pnimius, seichel and tainug, pleasure. Okay? Very, very important idea in Chassidus. And that's what the Rebbe is explaining here. The Yid is a panimi. Right? That means the Yid is all about expressing things in an inner fashion that aren't for the sake of something else, they're for its own sake. Right? So, so therefore, what can the Yid do? He can serve the Eibishter because serving the Eibishter is good. Not he doesn't have to serve the Eibishter because there's something that he gets as a result of that service. Because he's a panimi. What's a panimi? A panimi is doing what he's doing because he's doing it, and he's completely munach in it. Why is he learning Torah? Because it's godly. And when he's learning Torah, what's he doing? Learning Torah. Is there anything else happening? No, nothing else happening. He's learning Torah. He's not learning Torah and thinking about 3 other things at the same time. That's a chitzai. That's someone who's just bombarded by external reality and is doing everything in order to somehow have some connection to that external reality. A panimi is someone who can do what they're doing because it's the right thing to do, and that's where they are, and they're munach in that, and there's nothing else happening. What's that called? Das. What's das? Focus. It's called das chazak. The ability to internalize something. Das is internalization. So that you're completely, what the word in Hebrew is munach. You're completely in it. A chitzon is never in anything. A chitzon is doing one thing and he's thinking about another. Right? He's sitting and learning, he's thinking about lunch. He's eating lunch, he's thinking about going to the park. He's thinking about in the park, he's exercising in the park, he's thinking about what's going to be. But it's never where he is. Right? Which we all experience through our Nefesh HaBahamis very powerfully. Right? He's on vacation, he's thinking about work. He's at work, he's thinking about his vacation. Right? Why does he go to work? So he can have a vacation. Right? No. Why do you go on vacation? So you can work. So you have more energy to work. If you don't need the vacation, okay, no vacation. Okay, let's see if we can finish the paragraph quickly. Right? Okay, so let's read that again. Lochen. Ikar ha'ilui d'bechiras Yisrael, starting from 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down. Ikar ha'ilui d'bechiras Yisrael b'kadosh Baruch Hu. The essential loftiness of the choice of Yisrael b'kadosh Baruch Hu, Kishaharotzen the neshama shelamayla miyaseichel, the will of the neshama that's beyond seichel, makif, superconscious in this context, nimshach is drawn down, upeil and acts gamba seichel, panimi. Seichel is internalized conscious me. Shal yedei zed dafka. Then I know it's nimshach mi'etzem in the neshama. It's coming from the deeper place in the neshama. Panimius amakif. What's panimius amakif? Tainuk. That's also called panimius aratzon. The inner state of ratzon. Why do I want what I want? Because I get pleasure from it. Why do I get pleasure from it? I don't know. I don't know. That's coming from a very deep place in me. Right? Why would I rather? Why do I get more pleasure from driving in a silver car as opposed to a black car? I don't know. I don't know, but I do. Okay. A chutzpah showing up this late.
I got her shoes, okay?
Okay, yeah, I know. I don't know who gave it to you, but I'm going to have a word with that guy. Okay. So what does the Rebbe say? Shal yidei zeh dafka nimshach mi'etzem in neshama panimius amakif. What's panimius amakif? Panimius aratzon. What's panimius aratzon? Tainug, pleasure. And what did we say? Midas connect to ratzon. Seichel connects to pleasure. The source of midas is in ratzon. The source of seichel is in pleasure. Why? Seichel and tainug, seichel and pleasure are both inner states of reality. It's what you're experiencing yourself. Ratzon and midas are your connection to that which is outside of you. So amazing. So how do I know that my desire for Kadosh Baruch Hu is coming from pnimius haratzon? If it resonates in seichel, because seichel is connected to tainug, right? That's what we just said. That's what I was saying. That's why there's an elevation if it resonates in seichel, because seichel is connected to tainug, because both of them are inner experiences. They're both a panimi. Wow. I mean, based on everything we learned today, we spent half an hour discussing all that. Right? I hope you wrote it down so you can remember. If not, it's always on Mayanot YouTube channel. Okay. I want to finish within the next 3 minutes. I'm going to read to the end of the chapter. We'll come back to it on Sunday. I'm going to start from Lechein. Again, 4th line. Lechein. Ikar ha'ilui de bechiras Yisrael b'kadosh Baruch Hu. The essential loftiness of the choice of the Yid and the Eibishter kasharotzon the neshama shalamayla miyaseichel, when the desire of the neshama that's beyond seichel, makif, nimshach upeil gamba seichel. It expresses itself also in seichel, which is panimi, a power of the soul that's clothed in our body and acts within the context of our conscious reality. Shal yedei zeh Dafka nimshach mi'etzem neshama. That's how we know that it's coming really from the deeper place. What's that? Pnimius makif, which we've now explained is Pnimius harotzen, which is called tainug, because tainug affects seichel, and rotzen affects midos. Shalamayla gami harotzen. This is higher than the rotzen. Shalamayla mi'a seichel, which is higher than the seichel. And what's that rotzen called? Chitzenius makif, the external expression of the makif. Because what's rotzen all about? What's out there? And what's out there for me? Right? Not necessarily in a terrible way, but that's rotzen. Tainug is the pnimius of that. Where does that resonate? In seichel. Rotzen is lamayla min seichel. Tainug and seichel are one. I mean, they're very powerfully connected. V'yesh leimer. Let's read the last 4 lines. Dezehu gam mashu kosuv chelki havaya amr nafshi. That's why it says in the Medrash, chelki havaya amr nafshi. The Eibishter is my portion. Chelki dafka. The chelik. What's chelik? Hu bechinas panimi. That's the inner aspect of the soul. Why? Let's see. Ki yadua, as is known. Now, don't we all know this? Right? This is from a mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, right? Tav Shin, right? That what? The Frierdiker Rebbe explains the 3 different levels of that thing that we say every day and we're very into, right? And what's that? Ki yadu binyan matev chelkeinu umanaim garaleinu umayafa yerushaseinu. What are those 3 different levels? Matev chelkeinu, that's my chelik, that's panimi, the powers of the soul that are clothed in the body. Ma noim garaleinu, that's makif. Ratzon and Tainug, right? Mayafu Yerushaseinu, that's Yechidush Benefesh. That's the essence of the soul. Those are those 3 different levels. Powers of the soul clothed in the body, powers of the soul that are makif, and the essence of the soul. Those are the 3 different levels of, like I say, 3 different levels of chayis, of the vitality we get from the soul. What's called chayis prati, individual chayis that powers our body. Chayis kloli, the general chayis we get to be alive, but that chayis expresses itself in making my eyes work, my mouth work, and my ears work, and my brain work. Okay, that's chayis prati. Then there's chayis kloli, chayis, general energy, that we just, godly energy that keeps us existent. And then there's chay be'etzem, something that exists mamish, right? What exists mamish in you and I? Not our guf, our neshama. What's the difference between chay be'etzem and just chay? Something that's alive, but not be'etzem, can't give life to something else. Right? If I touch this cup, the cup doesn't come to life. Why? Because my goof is touching this cup. Right? What if I were able to imbue the cup with a neshama? What if my neshama touched this cup? The cup would be alive. I don't know what a cup alive looks like, but now it would be alive. It's, sprout legs and start walking around, and we'd all run out of the room. Right? Okay. Neshama gives life to something else. Goof doesn't give life to anything else. Right? Goof is high. It's not high be'etzem. This is where you can see this talked about at length. Important idea. Chelik Yud Tes in Likutei Sichos, the Chai Elul Sicha, where the Rebbe explains the difference between the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. Chayas Kloli and Chayas Prati. The Chelik Hu Bechin is Panimi, Ki Yadu Binyan Matev Chalkenu Manayim Gerle. No one wrote that down. Maybe someone did. Chelik Yud Tes, right? Chelik Yud Tes, unless you have photographic memories. Chelik Yud Tes, Likutei Sichos, the Sicha on, it's a Chai Elul Sicha. 1, 2, 3, I don't know. But it's a Chai Elul Sicha, Chelik Yud Tes, where the Rebbe explains the difference between the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. In other words, the difference between Chassidus in general and Chassidus Chabad in particular. Ve'ilu the Bechiras Yisrael b'Kadosh Baruch Hu kishabechira the neshama nimsheches b'pnimius. When it's drawn down to pnimius, ba'avana v'asoza, through understanding and comprehension, that's the pikach. U'ba'ofen shezepeil b'machshava divrei ma'aseh. Then it affects the person's thought, speech, and action. Shayidezu hamshoch the pnimius amakiv. This is drawing down pnimius amakiv, his tainug, into his conscious reality. How do we know it's coming from that place? Because it affects seichel. Ratzon is l'mayla minaseichel. That doesn't mean I won't do what my ratzon wants, but it'll be b'derech kabbalah soul. There'll be no seichel in it. Just do it, which is important. How do I know that it's coming from an even higher place? From Tainu? Because that'll resonate in seichel. Because Tainu and seichel are connected to each other. Wow. Okay. We did Yud. Yud base, and we'll go over that obviously next time, and then Yud base, Yud Gimmel the next two classes, and we will Bezrat Hashem finish the Maimer, and hope.